Hey, my name's Kevin, and I'm an MSF and Total Control trained rider coach. I release a weekly video here on MCrider focused on road skills or road strategy to help you become a better rider. Become a member and get access to even more tools to help you stay sharp and develop your skills on two wheels. And that video in the opening was sent to me by one of our subscribers, David, and it highlights some of the dangers of riding a motorcycle at night. Now, I'm not sure what was going on inside David right after that instant, but from the appearance, he maintained a very cool head, and that alone can be tough to do in a situation like that. There's no doubt that that was a life-saving maneuver to move that motorcycle over to the right and to give that passing car room to go by. So who knows what the situation was here? Was the other driver not paying attention? Were they driving impaired? Or did they just misjudge the headlight and miscalculated the distance of the motorcycle from their vehicle and thought they had room to pass? I was at a stop sign one time and I was waiting on a very dark intersection near a two-lane highway, and I was getting ready to pull out into that two-lane highway. Looked over to my left and I saw the dual headlights of a car that was a long ways away from where I was. I looked over to the right, and it was clear to the right. I glanced again to the left to see where that car was, and to my surprise, it was a motorcycle that was right on top of that intersection that I was getting ready to pull into. So what I had thought at first glance was a two-car headlights that were way up the road was actually a motorcycle with dual headlights that was very close to the intersection whenever I first saw it. So had I not taken that second look, I very easily could have pulled right into the path of that motorcycle. Riding on dark roads on a motorcycle can be very dangerous. And personally, it's a risk that I don't take unless I just have to. Now, there have been times where I've been caught out after dark, but I don't make it a habit to ride after dark unless I need to. If you do have to ride at night, let's talk about some of the tips that will make it easier and safer for you to get home. When I was in the Army, we used to do combat training at night, and during the course of the training, flares would be shot up into the sky that would light up the battlefield or the training field. These flares would come down on parachutes, but they would turn the night into day and allow you to see everything that was going on around you until the flares went out. So it also caused a phenomenon known as light blindness if you were not careful. The flares were very bright and they would temporarily light up the battlefield, but if you looked at that flare or kept both eyes open while that flare was doing its job, you had a very tough time seeing after the flare went out, putting you at a huge disadvantage. The trick was not to look at the flare and to close one eye while the flare was lit. That way you still had one eye to see after the flare went out. The same is true riding a motorcycle when you're on a very dark road and you're approaching cars. Don't look directly at the headlights. Look slightly away from the headlight, or maybe even close one eye until that car passes. On the dark road, that light blindness can have a huge impact on a rider's vision after the cars pass. I've had that happen myself. Car with their bright lights on, after they pass, it's much more difficult to see. But here's a bonus nugget of knowledge for you that you may not have ever thought about. I won't charge you any extra for this. Have you ever seen pictures of pirate captains? Most photos of pirates have one thing in common, that big patch over their eye. Well, have you ever wondered why so many captains lost an eye in their career of piracy? Well, they didn't. The patch had a purpose. The ships that pirates worked on had no power, which meant that when the captain went below deck, the ship could be very dark in comparison to the bright sun on the deck. The patch was a tool that they used to keep one eye in the dark all the time with that patch, and they were able to just simply move that patch and be able to see once they got below deck. As soon as they went back up on deck, and I guess every time they got their picture taken, they would put that patch back on over their eye, and now you know the rest of the story. So some other tips for riding at night. The type of visor that you've got on makes a huge difference. So if you've got a dark smoked visor, you want to make sure you've got a clear one in your bag as well. Even a lightly smoked visor at night puts you at a huge disadvantage on the road. I tend to use the type of helmet with the drop-down internal visor. I really like those. They work well, and you can keep the same visor on daytime or night. Also at night, the visors tend to fog up more, so a pin lock can really help with that. And if you're not familiar with what a pin lock is, Google the term helmet pin lock, Pinlock, and see if there's one available for your helmet. You'll have to get a new visor that's ready for a pin lock unless yours is already prepared for it. But keep in mind that a pin lock will cause some distortion when riding it into bright lights, especially at night. It kind of makes this star effect in front because a pin lock creates a double pane glass or coating to keep your visor from fogging up. But that internal shield also causes some distortion when you're riding at night, and particularly when you're going into bright lights. But I found it much more beneficial to not have a visor that fogs up than one that's got a little bit of distortion or star effect to it. Think about increasing your visibility too. So adding lights to the front of your motorcycle, as much offset from the headlight as you can. So you want that triangular effect if possible. So if you're adding lights, get them as low below the headlights that you can. Bright or reflective closing will help your appearance and make you more visible at night. And keep the reflectors on your motorcycle. You know, some owners take those reflectors off their motorcycle as soon as they get it because they think it looks cooler without the reflectors. I'm much more function over form, and reflectors at night are very functional. You'll also want to ride slower. This will give you time and space for others to make mistakes on the road, and it will give your mind extra time to process the hazards on the road. You know, a dead deer that's in the middle of the road is very easy to see during the day, but not so easy to see during the night. So slow down, give yourself more time to see hazards and to react to them. Be aware that some animals are more active at night, so they're going to be harder to see as well. And they're more intoxicated drivers at night. Rain becomes an even bigger hazard at night, so if you get caught at night in the rain, that's really hazardous. And generally, there are more hazards overall on the road at night, especially for motorcyclists. Remember our general rule of being able to stop within the distance that you can clearly see up the road. This becomes particularly important at night, so don't override your headlights and be caught off guard when something appears in that headlight view out on the dark road. If you can, position yourself a safe distance back from other vehicles on the road, so use the headlights of a car in front of you, and this can help to greatly increase your view up the road, but just make sure that you're not getting too close so that you still got some space between you and the vehicle in front of you. And there's a lot to think about riding a motorcycle at night, and it without a doubt carries some extra risk over riding during the day. If you're aware of those risks and you plan for them, you can reduce the risk that you face riding at night, but it will always carry more risk than riding during the day. For me personally, that risk gets too great, and it's not something that I'm real comfortable with trying to see at night, so it's something that I avoid on a regular basis. I have been caught out and ridden a lot of miles at night, but it's not something I ever planned to do. I'm still here to tell about it, so I guess you can ride at night and survive it. Just use some of these common sense tips, and that'll make your next ride safer at night as well if you're caught out after the sun goes down. You know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this subject, and we'll be discussing this topic and more over on the forums. So join us over on the forums to continue this conversation. You can learn more about getting access at mcrider.com/member. Until next week, guys, it's Kevin with MC Rider, and I'll see you on the road.